And it looks like our webinar is now live. Hi, Lauren.
Hello.
You're very welcome to the NewsWhip Pulse. I'm Paul Quigley, the CEO at NewsWhip, and I'm joined today by Lauren Powell, who is the Analytics and Social Lead at PepsiCo's Creators League Studio. You're very welcome to the Pulse, Lauren.
Thanks for having me. Excited to be here.
And we're very excited to host you because we are very interested in what you do to understand cultural trends and then relate those to a brand and then create content that maintains the brand's relevancy and tells stories. So this is going to be a very interesting conversation, linking social listening with the whole way through to the production of content with a brand that's doing that really, really well. So we've only got 30 minutes here today, so we'll jump right in. Only important notes: if you've got a question, you can drop it into the chat. Danielle, our producer, will be triaging the questions, and we will spend a couple of minutes on audience questions towards the end of our half-hour slot. And you can also drop them into the chat, and maybe something will pop up, and we'll be able to address it during the conversation as well. So Lauren, you're the analytics and social listening lead at the Creators League Studio. Can you tell us, what does this studio do and what is your role within it, and what is your day-to-day work?
Sure. So Creators League Studio is an internal content studio for PepsiCo, and we work primarily with Pepsi beverages. Pepsi, Mountain Dew, Life Water, Bubbly, so working on fun beverage brands. But we are primarily responsible for content, right? So most of the brands we work with regularly, we're in charge of their organic social strategy. So trying to figure out what to post on all of the social channels that you have to be present on these days, and creating the content and the strategy for that. And we also have like a production team that can make long form content, you know, movies, documentaries. It's very like a very creative, cool place to be a part of. And I sit on the strategy team, and I am essentially like half numbers and measurement and half culture and trends. So really, I look at measuring the performance of our content, and then trying to find trends to inform our content strategy.
Great. And for, PepsiCo has got so many different areas, so it is really around the beverages in that area where we'll be thinking about and focusing today. Yeah. And you previously worked at Anheuser-Busch and at Group M, Lauren. Is there any common thread or direction of your journey that's taken you to Pepsi?
Yeah, I mean, I've spent my whole career in digital. So I started out at Group M. I learned media buying. So that's when I got to wear the numbers hat very heavily. I was in Excel all the time. And then I moved on to Anheuser-Busch, and that was where I really started to learn that social listening piece and coupled it with the numbers piece. And I think like progressing in that role, I started to not just look at brand conversations, right? So originally it was, how is our content performing? What are people saying about our brands? And it became more, well, what are people saying in general, and how can we tap into that? And you know, the internet changes, culture changes so quickly. So that's what I think excites me the most about my career. Is just, you know, no day is the same.
So let's jump right into those cultural changes and understanding them and responding to them, and getting it from the spreadsheet into the creative. Can you tell us how you look for content and cultural trends?
Yeah, so it's been a journey. We now have a really great framework in place, because originally it was kind of like, let's just like be on social media and just see what's trending today. And as you can imagine, that gets a little like overwhelming, right? Because there's so much, and you never know what's going to make sense for your brand. So when I started at Pepsi, I work under a brilliant boss and with a brilliant team. And we have a global insights framework that looks at 9 human drivers, right? Things like security and connection. And the way that those manifest every year, or every couple of years, is different. So we started to look at these macro trends, and some of the sub trends within them, and start to monitor those. And we would look for overlap with our brand passion points, right? Areas we want to talk about, or partnerships that we have. And so in that way, we started to like monitor the topics that were relevant and what was trending within them. And so now we have a whole process where within our internal studio, we meet once a week to discuss those trends and what we're seeing. And then with some of our brands, we meet on a regular basis. I think it's every other week for Mountain Dew, and we chat Mountain Dew specific trends and just kind of ideate around content potential there. So it's very, very fun.
It's a really fascinating framework there. The 9 drivers, are these kind of universal human motivators? These aren't specific to, we're not talking about beverages, we're talking about core motivators of people and how those are manifesting different times in culture.
Yes. So it's from like we try to be very like consumer centric. We have like a consumer centricity team. And so yes, they are universal 9 drivers, and just the way that they like manifest or show up each year is going to change. So, convenience is one of the ways that like control manifested in the last year, right? With COVID, right? So we wanted a lot of convenience. And so within that, there's all these sub trends. So on-demand grocery and really all sorts of delivery and all of that. So we start to look at where there's overlap with our brands and just kind of see what's bubbling up and what has potential.
So when there is a change, so control is a driver and convenience was a manifestation of it, especially during COVID. And then you can see how that relates to Pepsi's brands. And how does understanding these upstream kind of drivers change how you might engage with a passion point or with a cultural trend?
It really gives us guardrails, right? So I think a lot of people are talking about culture first marketing or culturally led marketing. And I think it's essential in today's day and age, right? Like there's so much online, and I think a lot of it's turning into wallpaper. So to try to break through is hard. And for that reason, it's tempting to want to jump on every single social trend that we see, right? Every single meme format, every single tweet format. But when you have these human drivers and these territories that make sense for your brand and your brand purpose, you're kind of able to start to say like, yes or no, this makes sense or this doesn't. So it helps us not be that brand that's like activating on every trend and kind of annoying consumers by trying to be cool.
It's a very interesting parallel because, our tools are used a lot in newsrooms and in editorial functions, and journalists don't want to be told, here's the stories you should write just because they're trending. And we always say, no, that's not the point. You've got to have your editorial identity, the integrity, the decisions of the things you want to write about and your audience cares about. And then you want to see what's trending within that box. So it's a way of defining that kind of box for Pepsi.
Yes, I mean, definitely. Because if you don't have those guardrails, like I said, you're just going to be kind of annoying. Like you're not going to really stand for anything. So I think you have to know your brand identity, your brand values, and make sure that what you're speaking to, like you have a right to speak to.
Great. Okay, well, let's talk to the process once you see those, cultural trends, passion points, intersection with drivers. How does that, you've talked about the weekly Mountain Dew and trends meeting. How does that turn into creating content? And can you walk us through a little bit of the process?
Sure, yeah. So we kind of lead these like we call them culture rundowns. They're like little mini newsrooms. And in the studio, like we all attend, and that includes our creative team. So when we have a trend that we think is a good idea for one of our brands, like it's a very fun kind of informal meeting. So we'll talk about like, is there potential here? And for what brand does it make sense? And from there, we can kind of create an idea, maybe just for a quick post, or if it's something bigger, maybe work a little bit longer on a proposal and take it to the brand team and kind of discuss it with them. Mm-hmm. And then for Mountain Dew specifically, we have like a dedicated version of that for them every other week. And so it's us, like the strategy team, it's our creative team, and then the brand team, all in a room, looking at these trends, talking about what makes sense. So if it's something that's super real time, like our creative team, will be like, hey, like, here's our idea. And then strategy will kind of be like, well, this kind of has like a deadline. It's only going to be trending for a couple of days. Like, let's turn it around pretty quickly. And then sometimes the ideas are bigger or have a longer life cycle. And our creative team will kind of go back to the drawing boards, take, some time to put together a really thoughtful proposal, and then workshop it with the brand, and then we post it eventually. You know, we have a content calendar, so we just try to fit it in there where it makes sense.
Yeah. And do you have any interesting examples of, you know, those kinds of any activations or content that comes to mind? I'm over here in Europe and I can't get Mountain Dew, so, you know, something Mountain Dew related would be nice. I miss that drink.
Yeah, totally. I think Mountain Dew is such a fun brand because people who love Mountain Dew, they really, really love Mountain Dew. So we just have this very engaged fan base. And so last year we had started to notice that, like, because connection is one of the areas we monitor for Mountain Dew, and the
connection being one of the core drivers.
Yeah. So we're looking at all these trends, and one of like the sub trends is like online communities, and we were starting to look at how like dating was changing during the pandemic, and there were just a lot of jokes, right? A lot of memes and sarcasm kind of bubbling up last fall about like coupling season or cuffing season, right? Like, how am I supposed to find someone to date and couple up with for the holidays and the cold when there's a pandemic? You know, I'm lonely. And so there were all these jokes about it. And you kind of started to monitor that and see it bubbling up in those weekly meetings. And our community managers on Mountain Dew had said, you know, we had launched a Dew store with products last summer as well. And people were just loving that type of content. So we kind of took those two insights and we decided to make this post of a Mountain Dew body pillow. And we were like, you know, you love Mountain Dew. It's probably going to be a long, lonely winter. Like, here's something to snuggle with. And I actually love this because it was just a post at first. And I've done this before. Like, you create a fake product in a social post, see how people respond. Well, of course, people loved it. Like I said, Mountain Dew fans love Mountain Dew. So then we were able to actually like create it. And it's such a cool activation to be a part of.
And it's great to be able to test, you know, through the engagement with the post, okay, well, actually there is a product here. And
yes,
yeah, put the concept out right away.
Yeah, I did that in the past too. When I was working on Bud Light, we ended up doing the same thing with pool floats. So back when the summer of pool floats was like a big thing. So that's actually a format I love, is like do an Instagram post of like a fake product that's like funny, see how people respond, and then like actually go make it.
And is your team, when you create something like that, you're focused, I suppose, initially on owned channels, but are you also thinking about earned influencers and earned, you know, how far downstream are you going, and how do you think about distribution?
Yeah, I mean, like, so we're primarily responsible for organic social, but we do partner. I love our bigger agency team. We partner really closely with PR when they have a great idea and like how to bring that to life on, you know, social. And they're also wonderful about like getting press for that. So it's a huge team effort. I mean, everyone involved is just like, everyone has the same vision and the same goal. So it's very fun.
And I suppose related as well, does the Creator Studio have a briefing around kind of purpose and corporate social responsibility, those other dimensions? Are you doing listening around those and activations around those too?
Yeah. So NewsWhip's actually been really NewsWhip Spike has been a huge part of our process in the last year. So those of us who are stateside know that like it hasn't been the greatest year for culture and society in general. And so when something major happens that's going to affect a lot of people, we want to be sensitive to that, right? Like we want to make sure that we're not posting funny memes or advertisements that at a time that nobody wants to see that. So we are really using these, you know, tools like NewsWhip to monitor how big is the conversation? What does interest look like? What is the tonality and the sentiment? And kind of tuning into that to make sure we're being appropriate with when and what we post.
Yeah. I can imagine that's especially the 12 months that we've just been through. Mm-hmm. And does that mean that you might decide that would definitely impact timing, and it might also impact tone of a campaign or an idea?
It definitely has. And I think that it's, you know, you have something planned and then you have to kind of, you know, push it back a few days or rework it. But I mean, that's the right thing to do, right? We want to be respectful of people's emotions and what they're going through. So yeah, and we've really built out that work stream, obviously the last year kind of out of necessity, but I will say, I feel like we're in a good place, and tuning into what people are talking about is always going to be important.
And are there, I suppose, you know, you've got the ongoing dynamic monitoring, then you've got like big events and moments that, you know, are coming up in the calendar, like this famous advertising convention called the Super Bowl, or, you know, there's these moments. How do you prepare for those in the studio? And, you know, is there an intersection of the kind of real-time monitoring and listening and what you've got prepared that happens when a big event is taking place?
Yeah, so, you know, Super Bowl for us starts very early. I think, you know, people are, honestly, as soon as it ends, people are looking forward to the next year. But I will say, like, our big war room planning process probably starts in November, December. And we kind of decide like who's going to be, you know, responsible for what, start to talk about roles and what we want to do. And yeah, I mean, this past year, I think was my 6th or 7th Super Bowl. So I've been doing it for a while, but in the war room, we just want to monitor what people are saying about our brands, about the other advertisers. So we have NewsWhip up as one of our screens, and we look at like what's trending. And yeah, if there's something that mentions us and is going viral, viral being, you know, quite a bit of interaction, it's shooting to the top of like the interaction charts. We will work with our, you know, amazing community managers and copywriters to see like, is this an opportunity to engage or respond or retweet or all of those things. So it's the most fun, like just high energy activation. And yeah.
When you're in that position as well, when unexpected dimensions of something are the ones that people pick up on, right? Like, you know, like the Bernie Sanders mittens kind of at the Super Bowl, right? Then you're in pole position to respond. Like you can see that going viral, see, you know, how big it's going to become and respond quickly.
Yeah, and I think that's why it's so important to have everybody in one room, right? You've got the creative team who, you know, are doing their thing, and the, you know, community managers spotting opportunities and kind of coming up with funny ideas. And you have brand team right there who can say yes or no, like this makes sense for our brand and our voice. It's such a cool process to see come to life. So yeah.
And I suppose in social media, we're often thinking about, you know, the new emerging networks, communities. Are there any kind of social channels, communities, or even just dynamics that are changing around within the platforms that interest you at the moment or that you're trying to learn more about?
Yeah, you know, there's been so much that has changed in the last year. I mean, I can't get through this webinar without talking about TikTok, which of course is like the wild, wild west. It is a super interesting platform, but it's also one where I feel like you have room to play. So some of our ideas that do come out of our little, you know, culture rundowns or newsrooms are TikTok, and it's just trying something out. I think it's so fun when you have a platform like that that's new. You're trying to figure out, because you can just try things without pressure, right? There's no expectation that this like needs to go viral or it needs to do this, but you learn a lot from that. And then it's cool too, because I think TikTok influences the other platforms. So you'll see it come to life on Instagram, and so you can kind of repurpose. But yeah, we're also trying to figure out like what in the heck to do about Clubhouse and these new like audio only type places. I think Reddit is also a big one for us. I know you guys allow monitoring there, which has been huge for us. We have a big community for Mountain Dew on Reddit. And yeah, I really love it because it's no longer just a Facebook, Instagram world anymore, and Twitter, right? I think there's communities popping up like everywhere, and it's going to be really fun to evolve.
Yeah, I think when we're kind of briefing people, especially on how to think about Reddit, you've got these very passionate communities and often very knowledgeable communities, right? And they're probably really paying attention to what's written on the can, promotions, you know, anything really probably going on in the Mountain Dew world, right? It's very committed people. And have you learned anything from those communities, and how does that relate to, could you find passion points there that might be able to go large with bigger audiences and other platforms?
There's definitely like seeds of insights across the platforms. I think, you know, our community on Reddit really talks a lot about like flavors and products and like what their favorite things are and what they wish we'd bring back. So it's a great place to monitor for like our actual product and development team, right? And innovation. So yeah, it's a great place for that. And I think depending on your brand, you might get different insights there, but we have a very active community of like flavor enthusiasts and reviewers there.
We love thinking about flavors over here too. In fact, Danielle writes a lot about flavors, our show's producer. You know, the trends come hard and fast there. I think people are always chasing and jumping onto the newest ones.
Yeah.
Pickles are back every 2 weeks in some strange new form, right?
They are. I keep waiting for it to be like the summer of pickles because that's what it was going to be like 3 summers ago. So maybe this is the one where it just like builds to a peak. We'll see.
So you said at the very start, you're coming into this world from Excel, from measuring and looking at, you know, what's succeeded and what's worked and what hasn't, and evaluating campaigns. So what metrics and data do you use to guide content creation? You've kind of answered this already, but maybe you've got any other thoughts on it. And how do you measure campaign success afterwards? And are those different metrics?
Sure. I think, you know, there's no perfect metric. So I tend to just look at all of them and try to make sense of the larger story. I mean, obviously engagement rate is going to be important on social. I try to look more at like rich or meaningful engagements. So a lot of platforms will include a video view as an engagement, which of course naturally skews video content to be higher performing than static. So I tend to take views out and look at just like meaningful engagements, right? Likes, shares, you know, retweets, those types of things. Mm-hmm. We'll look at the amount of organic impressions, right? Because it's kind of tied to engagements. The more people engage, the more that piece of content is going to show in feeds. And then of course, you know, mentions and sentiment, super important. Like, are we actually getting talked about? Not just engaged on our content, but are people talking about us, tweeting about us? And then followers, right? Followers are a great indication that like you're creating stuff that people want to see. So we look over the course of the month, like, was there a spike in followers here? And if so, what did we do that got that? So those are the big ones. And yeah, I think for the big campaigns, the really important ones, I mean, everything's important, but things that have a bit more to them. We are looking at launch day reports, you know, real time. And then of course, every campaign gets a recap. We do things like weekly and monthly reports as well. Lots and lots of reporting.
Yeah. It's thankfully, you know, and there's so many data points, and hopefully it always ends up back in Excel somehow, doesn't it?
Somehow it's back to Excel. Although we've started working on, or we've built some dashboards that kind of automate a little bit of this for us. So that's nice. We can focus on a little more time on the trends and research. So
good. I'm glad to hear that. Actually, we talked a bit about distribution, but which would be the networks that you're focused the most on today? You know, there's TikTok as the new kid on the block, or Facebook, Instagram, Twitter, the others, and which would be, you know, the key ones for the audiences of Pepsi's brands?
Sure. I mean, every brand has a unique channel strategy because the types of people who are active on different platforms vary. Mm-hmm. I would say for most brands, like Instagram's very important. I think that's probably one of the more popular ones right now. TikTok is something that a lot of people have interest in and are starting to learn how to prioritize. I think Facebook for some brands is a standby and is super important. And then Twitter, I would say a lot of our brands activate on it, not every single one, but yeah, so you can see it kind of just depends on the brand. Some have different priorities than others.
Brilliant. It's yeah, and we'll probably be on some new network in a couple of years again, hopefully. I hope the ecosystem keeps throwing up some exciting new vistas for us. I see Danielle's got a couple of audience questions that have come in. She's just sent me our 5-minute warning. If anyone does want to drop a question, you can drop it into the chat, either to Danielle or to us all, and we'll see it there. But please, if you have any questions for Lauren, drop them in. One of the, I suppose, questions that has come in here is, it is a future prediction question. How do you think content generation will change in the next 5 years? So I suppose that could be either, you know, how you're creating content and where it's going and which networks it's going out on, and what will stay the same.
Oh goodness. I think, yeah, no, that's a lot. I think there's two things, right, that kind of come to mind immediately. One is that Gen Z is changing the nature of social. And I think that we're going from a very curated look to a much more authentic look. So I think TikTok has kind of been called like a bedroom medium, in that it's people literally just sitting on their bedroom floor talking to their phones, and that can go viral, right? So there's going to be this element of kind of peeling back the curtain, and brands are going to have to learn how to adapt, right? It's not going to be quite as curated and perfect as it has been, in some regards, I think, depending on your brand tone of voice. And I think the other thing is just the growing importance of influencers and content creators in general. I think there's so much talent out there that's just individual. People are teaching themselves how to make social content at home. And so I think that there's going to be a lot more talent to pull from. And I think for that reason, we're going to see like a variance in the types of content. I'm excited. I think it's just going to continue to get better.
It's very, like, as you're saying that, it makes me think about it from the perspective of a lot of our users are in communications, and you're moving from a very polished press release to a position where, you know, a brand is just saying things, you know, much more finding a way to have an authentic real-time voice. And you're going from trying to get that slot in the New York Times, you know, that ultimate earned media, to networks of influencers and micro-influencers that might be much more relevant to your brand, right? So it's big change in how you think about the network and influence. I've got a question from Kathy Ortis. Do you have strategies for building these smaller trends into larger company moves, or commentaries on how society is shifting?
Strategies for building smaller trends into larger company moves.
I suppose, yeah, informing company strategy based on the smaller trends that you're seeing. Kathy, you can let us know if we've interpreted that right.
I mean, I think it's about distribution. So it's kind of hard for me as someone who, like, digital and social media they're a central part of my job and really my life. Like I enjoy getting on TikTok and scrolling and seeing what people are doing. And so it's about getting that type of expertise in a place where they're sharing their insights out. So I lead a culture rundown with one of my teammates in the studio. And we actually do a culture rundown like once a month for all of PBNA marketing, or Pepsi beverage marketing, and talk about the trends. So it's getting that expertise who can figure out how to monitor these trends, how to make sense of them, and then figuring out the distribution. Is it a weekly meeting, a monthly meeting? Is it an internal newsletter? Like, what does that look like? And yeah, I guess that's probably my answer for the process.
Yeah, and do the insights from that filter up and start turning the aircraft carrier around sometimes as well? Like when you can see, you know, this authenticity trend, for example, like that has to be something that at some point, I guess people say we need a long term to address this long term. Like people don't like glossy anymore, perhaps.
Yeah, no, and we're still trying to kind of figure that out. I think that what's amazing is, and what I love about working for Pepsi is like our leadership team is so plugged in, and they really like have faith in their talent and their team. And so, you know, we get the resources to kind of research that, and they do listen. So I've been a part of organizations where that's not the case. So yeah.
Brilliant. Yeah, no, that's, I think having that continuum is going to be really important for big companies into the future. So that's brilliant. Thanks for answering, getting so much into a short time with us today, Lauren. That's been a really brilliant interview. And thanks to our audience for joining. For those who can make it in 2 weeks at the same time, we're going to have a really interesting conversation on something very topical, the future of storytelling in healthcare communications, with Jennifer Paganelli, who's the leader of Earned and Social at Real Chemistry, formerly known as W2O Agency. And she's going to be talking about some very relevant trends with us, and has a big team that mixes both earned social media strategy and journalism. So that should be a great discussion in 2 weeks. Please come. Lauren, this has been awesome. Thanks for joining us today.
Thanks for having me. It's been great.
It's been brilliant. Thank you. Thanks everyone for making it. Bye-bye.